Hey, welcome to Zen Hustlers Balance Podcast. We've got a special guest today. My name is Jared Brick. I'm the creator of Zen Hustlers Balance Podcast and the zenhustlers.com website. We are a free resource website for you to find more balance on the edge, whether that means having more productivity, having more impact, but also having a life that you love and want to succeed in, and something in your life that's probably not working out or not the level that you'd like it to be. On our podcast, we started kind of ramping up during COVID. We wanted to talk to people who walk the talk, people who've been through a personal journey, have some great things to share back, and want to give back to our community. So today, I get to introduce a local friend of mine, Toby Corey. Thank you for coming in today.
Hey, man.
Awesome.
Thanks for the opportunity.
I'm shaking your hand because we've done so many of these virtually. Like,
I love it.
yeah, it's like I miss that. I have really missed that during COVID. I'm an extrovert.
Yeah.
I like to be with people.
I do too. So
It's a great thing. And so thank you for coming.
yeah. Well, what an amazing studio, and check out that backdrop.
Yeah, we're right here in Capitola Village, Santa Cruz County. It's amazing. Fun fact about Capitola, 60% of people who come to the county come through this village.
Really?
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
Yeah, I would have never guessed that. I would have never guessed that many people roll through Capitola.
Yeah. That seems incredible. But given what this has to offer,
Exactly.
it's got a lot of charm.
It's got a lot of charm. It's really sweet. So Toby's joining us as the COO of CruzFoam currently. He has been a Stanford entrepreneurship educator for how many years?
11 years.
11 years teaching entrepreneurship.
Yeah, just finished that in the undergraduate school.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so a lot of
Got a
checkered past.
You've got a world in the M&A world. You've got a world in tech. Tesla being one of the companies that was on your resume. Tell us a little bit about the M&A world. Well, tell us a little bit about your background. Like, how did you get to where you are today?
Boy, I don't know where to start. I think here's a good starting point. So one is just connecting with who you are and what your true self is. And I've always been a really restless soul.
Okay.
Wanting to think about new things, do new things, and pushing the envelope, and really just being discontent with status quo. So that's really sort of driven me. And I think underlying that is just always having just a deep intellectual curiosity. And, my journey's quite interesting, but I think that, we're kind of summing everything up. I think one of the things that is our most precious asset and commodity is time.
Yes.
And there's a beginning and a
we talk about that all the time.
We can probably do another podcast on like what happens after this human form.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting podcast. But as far as I know, Jared and Toby have a beginning and a middle and an end to this time on Earth. So given that, like if you break your iPhone, you get a new one. Yeah. If you happen to smash your car, but you don't get time back. Nope. So not to say that we're perfect, because we're not, but just over time just have been more thoughtful about that commodity, where I'm applying it, the type of person that I'm trying to become, and through all the trials and tribulations of life. So, and then I definitely started out in tech. I took my first programming course in college.
What roles in tech? Just curious.
So let's see here. I started out in a technical role, software test engineer and software engineering, and then I moved into product management. So one of the good stories is that I've been really successful in finding really good mentors throughout my life and career. And that's such an important aspect. Yeah. And how to do that, again, that could probably be a different podcast that we do. But I remember I was at best a mediocre programmer, and had befriended our vice president. He worked at Atari. And I was just frustrated that, what would take me 4 hours to code, we're hiring engineers from MIT. My math is good, it's not MIT good. And just seeing them perform at such a higher level and wanting to be the best at what I do. And that was bothering. So I figured I could get better, but I see myself in the top 10%. I did it. So I was sitting down asking for some advice, and he said, Toby, what do you want to do with your life? I said, I want to run my own company someday. He's like, great, go into product management, because a product manager role is like a mini CEO. You're responsible for defining what the needs in the marketplace are, who the target customer is, competitive landscape, how are you going to market that product, how are you going to sell a product, and everything in between. That's a great role, then I got into a product management role and progressed up through the ranks, so to speak. And I ended up at this company, Novell. This is a time when we had these things called network operating systems. Today, everyone runs in the cloud. Yeah. And it was $1 billion business. I was vice president, general manager. And at the time, that was an important inflection point in my career because we had a really great CEO, and then a new CEO was brought in, and I learned how important it is to have a great leader that really understands like where the company's going, how it's going to get there, having vision for the future. He was a really, really bright guy, but didn't have a vision for the future. So Microsoft was really encroaching into our space, and I was young. I was like 32, and I said, "Man, like this CEO, I don't think has like the vision of where to go." And a lot in my life was able to turn basically lemons into lemonade. Okay. And in this case, met a kindred spirit there. He and I, at the time, the web was just being born. Downloaded my first
2000, 99, 2000.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's cool.
And then started to started this company in 1995 and saw a vision for where the internet was going to go. Yeah. And that was going to change the world, and we was going to only dream of back at that time. So he and I ended up starting a company. We acquired 44 companies in the span of 2 years doing web development work, had 100% organic growth. So we ended up with 10,000 people operating in 17 countries around the world, $1 billion in revenue, and successful IPO. I got to retire early in life at 37.
It's amazing.
But I was bored.
Yeah, like, first of all, I have two questions about that. Was that the dream to retire early, or did it just happen? And then also, was it what you thought it would be?
Well, that's a great question. So like life evolves, right? As you get to one sort of chapter, one stretch, and you sort of look back. And so at the time, that's what I thought it was. And I think over time, if you allow, I think life is a lot like a fine wine, that if you allow it to, it just gets better and better over time if you have that perspective. And at the time, you're young, into my mid 30s, pretty stupid, like, oh, I just want to like make a bunch of money and retire. But then you figure like life's a lot richer than that. Life's a lot bigger than that. So, however, the one thing that it did provide, the gift to me and my family, and the way I saw that was freedom to do what you want with, again, going back to like your time, which is your most precious asset, right?
I want to just make sure people really get that money is freedom.
Yes.
It's not happiness, which is what it gets conflicted.
Yeah, and I think the more you get into spending on material things in life, like the less happy you become because, and I subscribe to Warren Buffett's theory, which was like, wealth's not measured by what you make. It's really measured by what you don't spend. So if you have a really low footprint of spending, but just think if you had a low footprint of spending, like, oh, I got multiple homes in France and in Hawaii and elaborate cars and like big houses, like that's expensive to maintain that. Yeah. So then that forces you to figure out, okay, I got to find a way to keep generating enough income versus like, so you basically end up prioritizing material things in life. Yeah. And for me, I want the time to like put my energy into things that I want, hopefully set my family up and just, live a fairly modest lifestyle where I have enough, I'm really comfortable with that. So that was really, and have followed that principle and that gift, and that's what it's represented to me. So yes, it's definitely like over time just evolved and became clearer to me, right?
Got it. And going back to, now we're talking about being a Zen hustler. How much Zen was there in Toby back then? Or was it all hustle? Like, where was the balance back?
Yeah, so definitely more hustle.
I don't know what time point you want.
Yeah, definitely more hustle, but let me even go further back in time. So my mother was, my father was a science teacher. My mother worked for the Board of Education, so they've always been in education. But my mother was a strong, devout Roman Catholic. So went to church every Sunday, and I went to parochial schools from starting in 5th grade till St. Rose, and then East Catholic High School, and then went into college. Okay. And I think like, as you go through that, religion represents certain things for certain people, organized religion. And I think, again, being a restless soul, not wanting to buy into the status quo, began in late high school. And then when I graduated, just really thinking of that through. And a couple things were disconnected for me. One, in the Roman Catholic faith, you're born with this concept of original sin. Well, that was really hard to compute. Like, really? We're born with this original sin? That made no sense to me. And then if you really read the Old Testament and New Testament, they're like diametrically opposed. One's an eye for an eye, and the other's is the compassion of Jesus Christ, right? So that stuff just like didn't like.
We had a big shift 2,000 years ago.
Yeah. So I read this really great book. I'm forgetting the name of the author. It's called Conversations with God.
Yep, I've read it.
And the volume 1 was amazing. Yes, exactly. And it's just like
amazing.
And it got me on an entirely
If you haven't read it, we'll put it in.
Yeah, please do. And it got me on an entirely different level and trajectory of thinking, and began spending more time associating with Eastern religion philosophy.
Okay.
Buddhism, Hinduism, Zen, and Taoism. And like those things really spoke to me and really connected with me, which is like, it's not a deep doctrine, especially Taoism. Like that one in particular, aspects of Zen really, really started to speak to me in a really powerful way. And that really started to set off this trajectory of, and for me, my sort of Zen hustle is, it's very binary. So it's like when I'm in the thick of things, I'm going all out. And then in order to balance my equilibrium, which is different for everybody else out there, it's being able to like compartmentalize that, surfing, nature, and so many things. But I'm not good at like, finding balance. Balance to me is like, I'm all out, I'm disconnected, and I'm all like just chill.
That's balance to you?
That's balance.
That's interesting. Yeah. So to me I often use yin yang because to me it's better than male female. It's better than some of those archetypes we have. That there's this like, oh my God, I had a horrible morning, but my afternoon was great. Yeah. Or what a rough week. I need to take a little bit more. I need to step back and realize, wow, what impact is this having on me? So about 5 years ago, you started Zentrepreneur. So tell me about Zentrepreneur.
Yeah. So let me also touch on that too. So let me just tell all of your viewers out there, the first thing is that my opinion and $3 maybe get you a cup of coffee at Lulu Carpenters.
Okay.
But more importantly, it's that what I don't like, and I think where is a missed opportunity is when like, oh, I just read Tony Robbins and said I should do these 10 things, or Tim Ferriss, or Sam Harris, or pick your favorite person.
Pick anybody. Yeah.
What's most important is that
Oprah.
These conversations should really be about hopefully stimulating broader thinking and different perspectives. And something I may say, I'm like, oh, that resonates with me, but in a different way. Or like, you should, like, the value of having a human life is being who you are and being unique. And that's really the magic of human life to me. So, my perspectives, I think, reflect that same thing, which is like, we all have just unique tapestries of life, and whatever fits in. So I do a lot of reading, and we'll probably get it a little bit later in, and watching podcasts. And I take pieces of that, and it becomes something different for me and unique for me versus like, oh, I'm following this doctrine. I just went to this self-help seminar. I'm going to do like everything they said I should do. Yeah. So where's entrepreneurship started from? So that kind of story led to, broader thinking as I started to teach my class at Stanford along this sort of Zen principles, which is really all about the fusion of like two really important things. One is that we're all born with infinite creativity. And it manifests itself in very different ways. So let me give you an example of that. Creativity is largely measured by this term called neuroplasticity. And that's really is like, how active is the neural network going on in your mind? And I met this amazing professor, Dr. Eagleman, world famous neuroscientist, and he talked about how pretty much 100% of the population are close to it. As we go through time, the neuroplasticity erodes because you don't use it. So and the brain takes up somewhere 20 or 25% of the energy in your body. So your brain's like, okay, I'm not using this. I don't need to keep, having energy for that. But I have a 5-year-old grandson and a 3-year-old granddaughter. And when I have conversations with them, the stuff they say, the questions that they ask, because they have incredible neuroplasticity. So the world doesn't have a bunch of boundaries on it. Or I should be doing things X, Y, or Z. And but that opportunity and to create and to develop that skill and that talent never goes, well, you just choose to forget about that. And then we end up basically in the same kind of pattern of thinking the same way, having the same feelings, the same emotions, same actions, and life just becomes really, really dull. So,
and that's where I think some of those events can be great, like the Oprahs, the Tony Robbins, to spark you. As a spark. It's not a fire that's going to last. This is what I've learned. They help you with habits that you need to do then. And it's so much about habits and routines, but it's a good spark moment. Or a book, or a movie, or a film, or an event, and or meeting someone. Or traveling. They're all spark events that get you onto these different paths to hopefully open that neuroplasticity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So with that, underlying Zentrepreneur is this framework that I developed, and it has basically 3 axes. You have an X-axis, a Y-axis, and a Z-axis. So along the X-axis,
the computer programmer hasn't.
it hasn't gone away. I wish someday.
Yeah.
But that X-axis, if you label that consciousness.
Okay.
So consciousness is really all about, if you were to close your eyes and take yourself anywhere, think back to your childhood, think back about a great vacation that you had, a walk on the beach. David Chalmers claimed the hardest problem of humanity is human consciousness. No one knows where that exists.
Yeah.
Does it exist in some unified field theory? Is it really just contained between the 2 ears? It's probably those magical, unsolved thing that we know about as a species, right?
Yeah.
And so an important part is that your brain also operates in typically 5 different wavelengths. So there's a beta,
Alpha, beta.
Yeah, and most of us spend the time that we're multitasking. It's not healthy to stay in that mindset. Oh my God, I got to be on TikTok or LinkedIn, or I got to do this email. I got to pick up my son or daughter at a soccer game, and a million things that are going on. It's a very choppy brainwave. Yeah. And most of us we can't be creative in that brain set, and it's not healthy at all to stay in that, because your body's exerting cortisol, leads to inflammation and other problems on that. So, and then there's like delta and theta, which one's deep sleep, one's REM sleep. And there's 2 other really interesting brainwave vectors. One is alpha, which are very melodic wavelengths. So that's a part of basically connecting and to who you truly are, and getting out of this like crazy hustle mode that you're in.
Yep.
A more interesting one is called gamma, which they're basically like, they're even wavelengths, but they're much more compacted together. That also has to do with how much connectivity is going on in your brain. So if you've ever, I don't know, for those that play sports, where you had the most amazing day where you're making great golf shots, or every 3-point shot you're making, or in a soccer field, you just see it, or you're playing chess.
Yeah,
you're in flow.
Yeah.
Right? And it has to do with like connecting disparate parts of your brain. That's where your most creative self can be. There are David Lynch transcendental meditation claims that they can get you into that flow state. But that's an opportunity both from a health standpoint, a creativity standpoint, and what time are you dedicating to expand along that consciousness dimension. And the more that you can do that, I think the more richer life becomes, the healthier that you are, your perspectives become different, you can love yourself more and love other people more. But that's an important aspect of Zentrepreneur is growing and expanding along that consciousness dimension. And there's lots of ways to do that. Sometimes it's yoga, sometimes it's pottery, whatever that might be, right?
Yeah.
And then across that, the y-axis is really, label it wisdom, right? And wisdom is really like information you can turn into value. So what activities are you doing to expand? What books are you reading? What podcasts are you listening to? Yeah. What kinds of people are you meeting? And unfortunately, social media today does the exact opposite of that. So I did a test on LinkedIn and just literally go and like randomly pick 20 people and send them a LinkedIn request.
Is this a test we want people to do? Do we want people to try this?
But I've already done it. So I can save you the time.
We know the results. Yeah.
What will happen is that if enough people say they don't know you, LinkedIn will send you a message telling you, don't reach out to people you don't know. The exact opposite should be true, right?
So, because they're saying you're probably trying to sell them something.
Or you don't know that
hitting
person,
abroad.
Right? Yeah. And just think about like Facebook or TikTok or Instagram. Once you get that social graph, if you're conservative, you're getting conservative stuff.
You're going to get biased feedback.
You're going to get echo chamber.
Yes.
Right. So that actually makes your world smaller, and you get deeper and deeper blinders in. So like if you literally are doing the same thing, talking to the same people, the same ideas, the same acculturation, reading the same things day in and day out, then your
preaching to the choir,
your world becomes really narrow, right?
Yeah.
And then the third dimension is really what I call how that expresses itself for a work product, right? So like, what am I producing at the end of the day? So like when I worked at Tesla, yes, it's they're like, stress is like on a scale of 1 to 10, like a billion, dude. It's that high. But the 2 things that are important at Tesla is if you want to survive there, you better be a really creative person and think outside the box. Not just go and do like a superficial Google and then search, show up to a meeting with Elon, and like that meeting is going to go really bad. So how creative are you? And that's a talent and a skill of how to develop that. And the second one is that your work product. whether it's a presentation, an Excel spreadsheet you worked on, or if you're a software engineer, the algorithm that you develop, that better be like the best thing in the world. And like, that's really what, at the end of the day, your brand goes on everything that you're creating.
Yep.
Is it the best? Does that represent you, right? So at the end of the day, when Toby and Jared are no longer here, and you look back like, you know, what did I produce? What did I do, right? So always striving to have like my work product be the best that I can be. So Zentrepreneur has a lot to do with this ability to do really great work and to be the best person that you can be. And I think the core other concept behind Zentrepreneur is this concept that I learned from Generation Z, which is in teaching at Stanford for 11 years. I get to speak to a lot of college students, and it's one of the most enjoyable things that I do because they're so open and so receptive. And not only do I get to like share my philosophies with them, I learn and see how they were thinking about it. So it's a window into the future. Because they are the future tomorrow, right? Yeah. So that constant ability to like reflect on that and let that grow and develop, where what I found them to be as a generation is incredibly altruistic. And so
that's a thing of beauty. Yeah.
The generation I grew up in, kind of the hustle of the 80s, like I'm getting mine.
It's material.
Yeah. What kind of cool car are you driving?
Yeah.
What kind of house? Who are you hobnobbing with? Yeah. All this material stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that thinking about that, and I think that for me philosophically is that I just deeply believe, I look at the world and go, okay, are we creating more problems or more opportunities for future generations to come? I think we're creating more problems. That bothers me.
Yeah.
Right? Like we should care about future. So I think that we all have a deep moral responsibility to think about how do I contribute so that future generations have more opportunities, not inheriting more problems. So I look at my life through like two sets of lenses. One is like just tactical, right? There's a lot of broken shit right now. Like politics is badly broken. And these structures around social injustices, the way capitalism works, they're flawed and they're antiquated and these paradigms, but you can either like, so I continue to I want to vote. I put the big fight in there, but the way to change that is basically thinking about new ideas and new people that are going to emerge as leaders that have a different philosophy than kind of the old school of thought.
Yeah.
So I look at life through like, okay, there's some tactical things I got to do, but the chessboard is that, especially when I have the opportunity to talk to college students or probably your audience out here, is that stimulate thought, thinking creatively outside of the box. And my guess is that those seeds that get planted have a greater opportunity of changing the trajectory of humanity and this beautiful planet that we live in. That's so amazingly like the fact that we have an atmosphere, we're the right distance from the sun,
the miracle of Earth,
an electromagnetic field that can keep the solar winds from destroying. It's like
it's incredible.
It's stunning, like how like unique this planet is. And then so having that ability to think at a more chess level versus checkers, and like how do we influence and set up so that we change the trajectory from instead of creating more problems, we're creating more opportunities.
Well said. So we're going to take a short break and we're going to talk about more creating opportunities, creating what you're working on now. So we're going to learn about that. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Are you ready to gain confidence on camera, learn professional skills and styles, and develop your authority online with video? If so, I've got an in-person small group professional experience for you to learn right here in Santa Cruz, California. Now, this program is best for entrepreneurs, founders, startups, business owners, professionals, side hustle people who are just getting started and they know that video is the way forward for them. What you're gonna learn in this short, intensive few days is all about the media gear, the skills, the styles, the media files, the equipment, how to create a set, how to work with scripts, and the editor workflow that you're gonna need to output all this content online to any channel you choose. I'm going to be running this course. I have over 20 years in media experience, from photography to short films to online video. I have helped hundreds of professionals get started. I love teaching, and they've done thousands of projects that have reached into the hundreds of thousands on their own DIY videos that they've done in working with me. The investment is in you. Anytime you invest in yourself, you're investing in you. Now, you could pay this amount of money for one time as a video production, but these are lifelong skills that you're going to be able to leverage for your videos and your business going forward for the rest of your life. We also have discounts and scholarships available if you're a student, a nonprofit, or if you're a special circumstance that you want to tell me when you submit and we talk on one-on-one. If you've been recently laid off, let us know. We'd love to support you and see you create a plan that supports you on your next journey into video and whatever business you're in. People have asked me, why is it in person and not an online course, Jared? Well, video is a really emotional, human process and experience. And it's best done with the guidance of a professional, a small group setting, hands-on learning to actually feel and tactile and grow through that. That is the best way to learn video. And then you can always add on skills later on with online courses. But when you're getting started on video and you really want to quickly progress your skills, the best way to do it is in person in a small group setting. The next step for you is to read the information below, fill out the short form. There's no money due today. We're gonna have a conversation about your needs, your goals, your timing, and your dates that are optimal for you. And if it's the right thing, then that's fantastic. But we wanna have a conversation with you before you sign up for the actual course. Now remember, space is really limited. This is a small group experience happening live. So if you are interested, you've got to make a move today. So fill out the form below. You and I will have a conversation and we'll see if the VCTC course right here in beautiful Santa Cruz is the right thing for you. Thanks for watching. So welcome back to Zen Hustlers Bounds podcast. We're here with Toby Corey. Toby is currently the COO of CruzFoam. So tell us about CruzFoam and tell us why you got involved personally, because I know you care a lot about the planet.
That's an amazing story. I think I'm just a glutton for punishment. Like, what's the hardest thing I can find, and let me go do that.
What is CruzFoam?
So CruzFoam is a material science company that's developing materials for a circular economy.
Love it.
And
you might have to define circular economy.
Yeah, circular economy is things that, like, how do we basically create less pollution, less garbage that it contributes to this problem that we have, like all these microplastics in our ocean, in our landfill, in our lungs right now.
Yeah. The percentage of our body is
percentage of our body, landfill exploding with stuff we don't need or want, food that just goes to waste. So circular economy is really more about how do we live in a smaller footprint and be more self-contained versus massive waste. And this species is really good at that aspect of it.
We are very good at it.
So I met the two co-founders, John Feltz and Marco Rolandi. The company was started actually coming up on 7 years ago as a PhD research project at UC Santa Cruz, right here. So John did his undergrad chemistry, majored in material science. Marco, electrical engineer, material science. He has his PhD from Stanford. Marco has been working with this really interesting, it's a polysaccharide called chitin. Okay. And it's very abundant. It's actually in plants, plant cell structure, insects.
There's got some right here.
Yeah. You got some right here.
Great.
Is very abundant in crustaceans, especially shrimp.
Shrimp. Okay.
So if you think about it, really great strength to weight ratio. So like a crab shell is really light, but it's really, really strong. Yeah, exactly. So the company initially, when they spun out, I met him through Doug Erickson at Santa Cruz Works. Doug knows everybody. You know,
Shout out to Doug Erickson.
Doug, the ultimate connector here in Santa Cruz.
Yes, he is.
Also surf friend, Zen buddy too. But so we had an accelerator at Santa Cruz Works. I was on the board of directors there for a while. Heather Putnam was our executive director. She's like, Toby, you got to meet these guys. They want to make surfboards out of shrimp shells. I'm like, this sounds crazy.
Yeah, say that one more time.
Yeah, surfboards out of shrimp shells. And I'm like, this is nutty enough for me to get really excited about this.
Yeah.
Being someone who loves to surf, probably one of the best things that get me in that Zen mindset. I talked to him, and it sounded crazy enough where, like, this sounds great. So I became
and surfers are wildly attuned to how the planet's doing.
They are.
They see the trash. They're in the ocean. They know when it's a toxic
So surfboard blanks are mainly polystyrene, which is like the worst plastic you can have. When you're done with that surfboard, you see all these wave runners and everything out there. Where does it end up? It ends up in landfill. It's just there for 400 or 500 years. Yeah. Or it breaks apart, and those microplastics are everywhere, right? Yeah. So massive problem. Anyway, so I thought this is a good problem to solve and big opportunity. And so I became an angel investor, and I joined the board of directors and followed the company. And like every first of all, I've never known of a startup that didn't have to go through a pivot. Because if entrepreneurship was easy and startups are easy, everybody would be doing it and own their own island off the coast of Greece, right? They're hard. And a lot of them fail for a variety of reasons. Yeah. Probably separate podcast for you and I. But at the heart of it, they were tuned to like, man, raising money to do a shrimp shell surfboard Not a lot of investors saw a return on that.
And the surf industry alone is
So like, it's like, you know, there was just like not a need there that we could address in a real fundamental
It sounds more like a local project versus a global project.
So our CEO, John, went, there's this 2-week program, I think it was in Australia, with the National Science Foundation, went through a customer discovery process, had over 100 interviews, and found like, oh man, like protective packaging is a $25 billion market. If you think about getting some from Amazon or...
It's actually my father's business. Packaging.
There you go.
Up in that world.
Look at that, and there's a lot of plastic in there, styrofoam or polyethylene. Again, just contributing to this massive problem.
It's typically one-time use, and then it goes in the garbage.
Yeah, exactly. So, hey man, why don't you guys actually build this material to solve that problem?
Got it.
So made that pivot, and company began to develop this material. And what I liked about it was, one, the fact that they could create this biomaterials made of all natural ingredients that could serve a really important need and could be either composted or recycled. And it was good for the earth, all natural ingredients. 2, the thing I also love was like the strategy that the guys started out with, like, in order to scale this, because there've been lots of biofoams. And the reason why many of them can meet the mechanical properties of the market, but they're not scalable. I can't produce enough of them, and they're too costly, right? So you have to make it costly. In order to create a really unique value proposition, it can't cost me 3 times more to ship my product. That's not a good value proposition to have.
Hence why we have plastics.
Yeah, so the way that we're going to solve this was we're going to create a material that can run on existing manufacturing equipment, extrusion, which is how a lot of polystyrene and polyethylene is manufactured, through extrusion. So that's what got me really excited, and they were making really great success down that path. And what happened is, being this restless soul, I have kind of, towards this back half of my career, I find myself kind of like engaging in something from 2 to 3 years of like peak all out, put your body and soul into it, get yourself to a burnout phase, and then like unplug for 2 or 3 years. So after leaving Tesla, running Tesla Energy, was getting ready to like, okay, man, it's time to get my battle gear back on, and started looking at some opportunities. And it was May of 2021. And John and Marco were like, well, if you were getting ready to jump into something, why do you come here? So when it's in Santa Cruz, and to do something on this scale was really exciting. So at that time, this sounded like the craziest thing I could do. Why not? I have no material science background. This is right up my alley. Let's go do this thing. So yeah, jumped in as chief operating officer, and I'll become like, I'm at 2 years in June when I joined there.
It's great. I'm so glad you're getting involved. I just know it's going to have a bigger impact because you've gotten involved. So thank you for getting involved in them and elevating them. I'm sure you're helping them elevate. What are some of the challenges you see in the startup world?
So that,
like the everyday stuff. What's some of the everyday stuff you see in the startup world that's not
like what
healthy for folks to continue?
So what doesn't show up is probably the better question.
Balance. Peace, calm.
There's no balance whatsoever. But having said that, like, one of the things I think is important for your viewers is that most people look and think of naivete as a liability. It's actually the opposite. So when I went to Solar City, I knew nothing about solar. I was Solar City's chief revenue officer. I took my company public in 1997. I went through my second IPO with Solar City. And like, if you show me my electricity bill, it would be like reading Greek. Like, what's a kilowatt hour? What are your demand charges? But I really believed in renewable energy and felt that it was a massive opportunity here. So taking that naivete and also like really being able to supercharge your intellectual curiosity and wanting to go in there and learn. And that was part of like not only the magic, but the value and the happiness factor for me was being able to learn something and basically from a first principle standpoint. And I remember talking to our CEO and Elon, it was like, why don't you hire someone from the solar industry? And we don't want someone that's narrow thinking. Want somebody that actually was a successful
the blinders on too much.
Exactly. That to me, if I were to give one bit of advice, is like, entrepreneurship, number one, it's too narrowly defined. It's like, oh, I should start a business. Entrepreneurship is really code word for problem solving, innovation, disruption. Every company needs that. That to me is the currency of the 21st century. That's what companies are going to value, because marketing strategies become commodities. They come and they go, they change and they morph. But and I don't see AI or nanotechnology actually replacing this thing between your ears if it's applied and used properly. There's nothing out there like that. So that's the value. And going back to that like Zentrepreneur model, like am I expanding and developing my creative talents in whatever way it's going to manifest itself becomes really, really important. So, and I think that once these endeavors that I get involved in become more, you never stop learning, but like the curve starts to like flatten out a little bit. Yeah. That's when I
figure out what's working.
And that's when like, that's a grind to me.
Yeah.
That's, I'm disinterested in that. So, but having said that, I think that, and as I said, everyone's wired differently. You and I are wired differently. You're able to find some time to get out of that hustle and get into a Zen mode at certain periods during the day. I tend to like, you know, maybe at night, or it might take me 3 days to like find my Zen.
Yeah.
But, you know, I remember talking to a UCSC student. They're like, you know what? Everyone's telling me that I should be more organized and to get more done. I'm like, but that's not you. That's not your authentic self. So like, that's why like everyone's going to...
Well, everyone's an expert. Everyone has ideas. Yeah. Everyone's giving you feedback. I think of this a lot with food and diet.
Yeah.
Everyone's telling you to do different things, exercise, food, diet. And it can be really hard. One of the reasons why we do a resource website is that we don't know what you're interested in.
Yeah.
So go explore, go play. So on your team, you have a younger team and the students. You mentioned something earlier. So what are some of the traits you're seeing on the team that you want to either cultivate or say, hey guys, this is a danger. I've been down this road. It's a dangerous friggin' road. Yeah. So what are some of those things you're seeing?
So I think what I try and do, number one, is that I see a lot of companies have some significant challenges. One of the most, I think, biggest errors that they make, and I learned this reading Steve Jobs' authorized autobiography by Walter Isaacson. It's a great read, both professionally and personally. I watched Elon do this, and like not everyone has this skill, and I've been learning to try and develop that. Is like the bigger exercise is not basically boiling the ocean. So what happens is companies, they get everyone together, what should we do? And they fill a whiteboard up with a million ideas, and then they try and do like half of them. Yeah. So basically, like you're gonna do mediocre, like versus like what are the 1, 2, or 3 things that really move the needle that are really. And I've been in meetings with Elon's like, that's a good idea, but we're not gonna do that. And so the first step in like figuring out how to like kind of modulate your life and getting yourself where you can actually be manageable versus always feeling like I'm not succeeding, I'm burnt out, I'm so far behind, is that what I have found is that typically there are a couple things that really move the needle, and understanding what those are and one of the first aspects of how to bring more balance in your life, instead of trying to do everything. Because the startups, you don't have enough resources. Your biggest asset is your speed, right? Yeah. But you can squander that by literally going in a lot of different directions or trying to take very common many things,
very common problem.
So that's one of the most important things right now, is really understanding, especially if you're, no matter what company that you're at, is like, what is the customer problem? What is the real need in the marketplace? Yeah. And working that back, like, are we really focused on solving that need? Because most startups fail for one of 3 reasons. Number one, they find out like there's no need in the market. Yeah. And that's either that the idea was flawed from the start, or the idea was great, but the execution of it was bad.
The offer didn't match.
Yes, that's the number one reason why startups fail.
Okay.
And that's a lot of times drinking your own Kool-Aid or having too many blinders on in the company, not getting out and talking to customers. 2 is that you don't have the right people. So this analogy is like, you have to, I like to use the bus analogy. First of all, it's like, is the bus going in the right direction? Which means the person sitting in there that's driving that bus, are they going in the right direction? Then are the right people on the bus, and are they sitting in the right seat? So a lot of times you've got some really talented people, they're sitting in the wrong seat. And I've seen that at every company that I've worked with. Or the bus is like,
it reminds me of
bus is getting ready to climb off the cliff.
A tandem bike that just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah. So that's the second reason that they fail, like the wrong people, or they're sitting in the wrong seat, or there's the wrong driver. Yeah. They're trying to solve the wrong problem.
And they're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Or they run out of money.
Which is gas, right?
And that's all, that's cash. And that's all kind of interrelated. So you got to be able to raise cash that has to do with the vision, has to do with the people that are working in there, and the problem that you're trying to solve. So all those things are interrelated.
Yeah. What do you tell when either students or coworkers come to you with some advice stuff on a personal level? Yeah. What are some of the things you give them on a personal level? Like, hey man, this is frying me out. I can't keep burning this both ways. I've got kids, I've got a partner. Yeah. What do you give advice at a personal level?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. And it does go through a bit of discovery and asking questions, right? Like, okay, where do you want to go? Are you on that path or off that path right now? Yeah. What are the things that make you really happy in life? And who's, what type of person do you really want to become? And then it kind of explores off that. And you end up getting like a good set of notes and a good grid, and can currently assess like, okay, like, are you mapping to this, right?
Yeah.
Or are you like way off track? And it might be at times you may be grinding or hustling for a certain reason. Like, yeah, I'm making a lot of money right now. I realize that. I'm going to try and like stockpile a bunch of this stuff, you know, get it while the going is good, but knowing that it's just basically a stepping stone to somewhere else, right? So I've been in those situations where, you know, as I've looked at career opportunities, the way that I've assessed those is, number one, is the role that I'm looking at going to really excel and propel my career forward to where I want to go? And the way I do that is like, okay, I see myself in that job and I go, okay, project myself 2 or 3 years ahead of time. What is my resume going to look like? Like, what have I accomplished that I've done? Not like that the company's done, right? And is that going to allow me to grow and expand?
Yeah.
Two, like the person I'm working for is probably the most important thing. Like, am I going to learn from that person and this company?
Mentorship.
Exactly. Really good mentorship so that I'm getting that really good advice. I remember like a good example of that when I became a product manager, I had a really good director. His name was Walter Feigenson. Well, if you're out there, you're the man. And he basically like gave me like, I remember he did my first employee review. I was like, I don't know, 23 or something. And he's like, a good product manager possesses these 4 skills: forceful, organized, a product champion, and a perfectionist. So we talked about like what those meant, right? But more importantly, part of that was like being a product manager, you got to be able to go out and do presentations. Like to the sales force and
you had never done those, so those are new skill.
I sucked at it. It reminded me of like,
so is it good to do something you suck at, or
stick with it? Hey, this is like, I want to become good at this, so like I have to learn to develop the skill. I want to be like, most people want to be a good presenter. But like, it's like stage fright. Like, how do you get over that, right? And I remember when I was in college, I had this public speaking course. Dr. Seth Hawkins. He was the coach of the debate team. He had like the twill jacket and the patches on. I literally smoked a pipe at school. I started school in 1979.
Classic.
And you'd go up there, and then in front of the whole class, you do your talking, you sit there like, I counted like 72 ahs. He's like, hey, Mr. Corey, are you on a boat? Like you were rocking, and just like eviscerating in front of the class. I'd be like D-. So I'm like, oh my God, this is brutal. So maybe that like just, that was probably such a bad experience that like, and then, but he's like, look, so he got me enrolled in like a Toastmaster class. And then he's like, I want you to go home. It's time with VCRs. I want you to film yourself, and then I want you to bring that in, and we're going to go over that. And like, we just went through it.
I actually tell all my video clients
and
do
I
that.
watched it, and I'm like,
that's great advice.
Suck. Like, it's great advice.
And I always worry about people who don't watch their own stuff. And I'm like, no, you need to learn.
Exactly.
I don't know who you think you are.
Yeah.
Unless you're an A-lister director and 1,000 people are watching you, but like, you need to watch your own stuff.
Yeah,
you need to
true.
And have some like
eat your own
tough enough skin to be like, yeah, you're right. I got to work on this. I got to work on this.
And I still like, I'm still not the best, but what I have to is like,
point.
I've learned to become like my authentic self. So like, and I actually like did a TEDx talk, and I hated it. It was like, oh my God, like why did I do this?
That's something you don't often hear.
This is so but it was like, it was so canned, and it only take 15 minutes, and like, it's like sometimes. And a lot of times too, like you're better off trying something and hating it than not doing it at all.
Advice.
And a lot of that's where you find
that's great advice.
All the richness.
It's better off trying and hating it than never have done it all. The regret will be the thing on your deathbed.
And it might have been like, I went through that. I might have been like, you know what? I like a software engineer, like I kind of reached my limit, and then like decided, okay, this is not the right profession for me. And maybe if I never could become a reasonably decent public speaker, I would have said a product manager is not right for me, right? But I found I did like that role a lot. I knew that was a really important skill set I had to have. So I worked hard to get better at it, right? So I think a lot of that is, and then so you're traversing through this sort of list of like, and I think at that time where you've got to be able to step back and go like, am I healthy? Am I happy in what I'm doing? And then having that, like anytime you want to change your behavior, 3 things have to occur. Number one, you have to realize like, I have a problem. So whether it's an alcoholic or some other like addiction,
you got to be clear with yourself.
If you're like you have high blood pressure, you're not happy. Like if you someone can't shake you and go, hey, there's something that you don't seem to have
something wrong with.
So the first thing is realize like I have an issue or behavior I want to change. That's the first thing. Second one is like I'm actually willing to put some effort and energy to change that. And third is to actually do that. So my behavior's starting to change, and I'm actually working on versus like the person just complaining all the time, like, oh, I don't have time, and I'm so tired. and feel like really burnt out. Like
it's this vicious cycle.
Infinite cycle. Yeah, sure. It's going to stay in that that neuroplasticity. To keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. It's never going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So I think having that sort of self-awareness, and I've worked on that as well too, trying to become more self-aware.
Yeah.
I definitely wasn't that way earlier in my life. And the other thing that I've been also working on is just being a better listener. And like in today's, it's just think about if you go into a meeting and how much is that person on their cell phone, or you could just tell, like,
just not there.
Don't
not
have
there.
their undivided attention.
Yeah.
Right. So like I've tried to be like a lot.
Do you guys have a company policy about phones, or how does it work?
I think it just really goes to like, again, if you're in this beta phase moment, you can't be creative. It's not really because you have a million things going on, and finding that time to realize like, oh man, like, and so I've been a lot more when I'm sitting down with like a team member, that like consciously thinking to myself, like, focus and listen, right? And it's like, it's a really underserved talent that we all have, because like, just think about how noisy life is today. How much pollution is going into watching.
The number one fear is public speaking. Yeah. Maybe we should be teaching listening, because if the opposite of speaking is listening, you never hear about people listening unless you're in a therapy, setting or
100%.
So I don't know why that skill isn't being actively propelled in our culture. So maybe that's the next thing.
Well, it's funny, when I first went to start teaching at Stanford in 2011, Heidi Rosen brought me in there. She's amazing. She's a venture capitalist. And she said, look, you're going to have the class. A third of your class is basically, they're checked out.
They're tuned out.
And so if you invest energy there, you're wasting your time. You're doing a disservice to the folks that you can actually move the needle on.
Yeah.
And I was like, instead of like having this like, oh my God, like I'm going to put everyone on my back. And like, it's like, and that had a lot to do with life, which is like stuff like, again, the number one investment is my time. And like, am I enjoying this? And I'm like, what am I going to get out of that? And like, and so really kind of thinking that thing through provides a lot of clarity for me. Yeah. And knowing sometimes, I'm kind of burning it. This would be a good week where, I've got this big meeting at the end of next week. We're flying to our largest partner, Atlantic Packaging. I had a board meeting on Tuesday. So I spent like the weekend grinding through a presentation.
Yeah.
And today, before I got here, we're just like doing some competitive intelligence. And like, I finally I cleared my calendar. So one of the things that I do is Fridays, I block my calendar, unless it's really important.
Yeah.
And so like, that's my time to like, and maybe you should go fuck off and like take my dog on a hike. Yeah. So I do find those times when, like I said, during the day, and sometimes
well, that's a good tip though, is block it out on your calendar. Block you time out on your calendar. They say if you want to look at what people value, look at their bank account and their calendar.
Yeah.
Those are the
and I'm trying to get better at, probably, like I said, the bleak times, and so I'm over on Ingalls, which is right down from Verve. There'll be times I'm like, I'm kind of grinding, and like, I'll just go down and get this really cool, like turmeric tea. Yeah. Or what have you. So
do something. So we're going to wrap up with Toby Corey. So stay tuned for the end of our conversation. Welcome back to the Zen Hustlers Bounce podcast. We're wrapping up an amazing conversation. I think we could have multiple of these. This is going to become a series. So thank you for being so open and just transparent about your life and everything you're sharing. So we talked about something you might want to share with the audience about what helps you or what tips you could give them as a next step and action, that action phase. Yeah. So what was something you thought of?
Oh, that's a great question. First, thank you so much for having me on the show and to be able to connect with your audience.
Yeah.
Always an honor and a pleasure. So, Matt, I had talked about that Zentrepreneur model on those 3 axes, and I think sort of relating back to that, here's kind of my thoughts and kind of parting wisdom, again, whatever that's worth. I absolutely hated science in school. Like, it was like terrible subject. And then through that knowledge, y-axis, like, how am I expanding? I've got reconnected with science, but in a very different way. So I think that this area around quantum mechanics, which is what's happening at the subatomic level, is the most incredibly fascinating space where Schrodinger's experience is the cat dead or alive, where particles can become wave or particle, the double slit experiment, that these wave patterns react differently when they're being washed versus when they're not. And then, so there are 2 amazing podcasts that I would highly recommend. Okay. So if you go look up John Hagelin, John actually is the president of David Lynch's Transcendental Meditation. He's a theoretical physicist and has talked about this concept called the unified field theory, where he summarizes that consciousness actually exists in this unified field theory. And fast, you can just look up John Hagelin. He did a talk at Stanford.
And it's a podcast?
It's a podcast.
Video? Okay.
Yeah. No, actually it's a video.
Okay.
So
we'll find a link for it.
now the other one is this other rad dude named David Tong, also a theoretical physicist. He did a talk in London where some of the most famous physicists, Faraday used to speak there and do lectures back in the 1800s, and Rutherford and a bunch of others. And he talks about what we're made out of. And it kind of gets to the same place, but with an entirely different story.
Okay.
And they're most mind-blowing, amazing videos out there.
After that, you're like, what am I even made of?
You'll be blown to pieces, right? And that could be a second podcast that we do, which is like also in terms of mind altering, some of the psychedelic journeys that I had, and like what I think that we're made of and my thoughts there, but that's a whole separate show. Happy to share.
We've got ones on frog and ayahuasca. No, yeah.
There, yeah.
I'm going to do that. We're going to follow up with that.
It's up there. That. And then I would say there's so many great books to read out there, but two in particular that really captured my imagination. So if you go back, I don't know, 6 BC with Lao Tzu and Tao Te Ching.
Yep.
So this author who went to Yale named Stephen Mitchell, Tao Te Ching, rewrote that book. So he didn't lose any of the essence of it, but modernized it and made it where I could even understand it.
Okay.
And there's a companion book to that, follow-on book to that. They're mind-blowing. They're all marked up to the wazoo.
Yeah.
And then lastly, a shout out to Dr. Jay Wallace.
Yeah, we have this book right over there.
There you go.
Blue
Mind. That book also like just changed my mind. Blue Mind. I've always wondered like, why am I so attracted to water? One, I guess our body's 72% water, but it's particularly the ocean. And he did his like PhD in the study of water on the brain.
Yep.
And that book's also like marked up to Kingdom Come. So Dr. Wallace, Blue Mind, Tao Te Ching with Stephen Mitchell, David Tong, John Hagelin. Just start there and see where it takes you.
Got it. So it's Friday afternoon. You got the rest of the day. What are you going to do with the rest of your day?
I have been telling myself that I should surf. It looks the waves look pretty tasty out there.
Yeah.
So if the wind doesn't kick up, I haven't surfed since before Thanksgiving. Before I went to CruzFoam, I used to surf 3 or 4 days a week. So they're really working on like getting, realizing, like, hey, dude, you have a problem. Like, you got to change that behavior. So unless it's windy, I want to be out there surfing.
All right, great, man. Thank you so much. Again, the handshake, the in-person, back in person when we can do it. So thank everybody for watching. And we're going to probably follow up with Toby again because, as you can see, he's a wealth of information and so much to offer back over an amazing career, one that I'm super inspired by and impressed with. So thank you for sharing it. And if you have any questions about how we can support you in the Zen hustle lifestyle, balance on the edge, as we like to say, it's not easy to do. You know, it's a fine line, and either side is either boredom or excitement. You know, it's like, what are you going to do? So thanks for listening today and stay tuned for more. Take care.